Have you ever read something and just gotten a weird feeling about it, like something's not quite right? Well, today, we're going to get into the art of critical thinking. We're going to deconstruct how persuasive messages really work and, more importantly, give you the tools to spot when an argument is maybe, just maybe, trying to mislead you. So let's dive in.
Okay, so let's kick things off with this. It's a pretty bold statement from our source material. Whoa, right? I mean, that line is definitely designed to get a reaction out of you. But what's actually going on underneath it all? Think of it like a little puzzle that we're about to solve together.
So that leads us right to the big question, doesn't it? What tricks, what techniques are actually being used to try and persuade you here? Well, before we can answer that, we need to get our toolkit ready.
All right, Section 1, the analytical toolkit. See, to really take apart any message, you've got to have the right tools. Our source gives us 3 key concepts that are going to be like our special glasses for critical reading. Let's break them down. First up, we've got bias. So, what's that? The easiest way to think about it is like someone putting their thumb on a scale to get the result they want. It's when an argument is just one-sided. It's only showing you part of the picture, and it creates this slanted perspective. And this can be intentional or sometimes not. Okay, next on our list, rhetorical devices. These are all the special tricks and techniques a writer or speaker uses to make their point feel more powerful or just stick in your head. Like using a really strong metaphor or asking a question that just stops you in your tracks. It's not so much about the what, the facts. It's all about the how. It's the craft of persuasion. And our third tool, and this one is super important, is the logical fallacy. It's like a crack in the foundation of an argument, a straight-up mistake in reasoning that just makes the whole thing unreliable. So an argument with a fallacy might sound totally convincing, but when you look closely, logically, it just falls apart. Okay, so now we have our toolkit, right? We've got bias, rhetorical devices, and logical fallacies. So let's head back to that original ad and pop the hood to see what's really going on. Okay, here it is. This is the full passage from the exercise titled, Why Every Kid Should Own a Bible. Now I'm going to read the whole thing out loud. As I'm reading, I want you to listen closely. See if you can spot any of those techniques we just talked about. Ready? Here we go. Owning a Bible is not just a good idea, it's the only way to grow spiritually. If you don't have your own Bible, you're clearly not serious about your faith. Experts say that students who read their own Bible regularly are more likely to stay strong in tough times. And besides, who doesn't want to look spiritual at church? We've even got cool leather covers and built-in highlighters. Don't miss out. Get yours now. So, the first thing you always want to do is find the main argument. And the core claim here is pretty absolute, isn't it? It says owning this one product is the only way to grow spiritually. I mean, that's a massive claim to make. So the real question becomes, how in the world does this ad even try to support that?
And to help us out, the source material points out a few classic patterns to watch for. Think of these as the usual suspects. You've got the bandwagon fallacy. That's the one that plays on your fear of being left out. Then there's hasty generalization, where you make a giant conclusion based on like one tiny piece of evidence. And the no true Scotsman fallacy. That's a tricky one where you just change the rules so you're always right. So let's see if we can spot any of these in our ad.
Okay, so if you look closely, the ad does throw in what's supposed to be a strong piece of evidence. It says, experts say. See that? That's a classic appeal to authority. And it's a really common technique because, let's be honest, it works. It makes the claim feel super credible, like it's backed by real research. But then, watch this. The whole argument just switches gears. The language totally changes. It goes from talking about experts to pure emotion. When it says stuff like, who doesn't want to look spiritual at church? Or, don't miss out. What's that tapping into? It's going right for our social instincts, isn't it? Our pride, our fear of being the only one not in on the secret. So let's connect the dots. The source breaks down the flaws pretty clearly. That don't miss out line, that's a textbook bandwagon appeal. The part about wanting to look spiritual, that's a straight-up appeal to pride. And the huge, overarching claim that this one product is the only way, that's a perfect example of a hasty generalization. It completely ignores every other possible way someone might grow spiritually. Okay, so this is where the lesson does something really interesting. After showing us how to take apart this loud, kind of pushy argument, it completely pivots. It offers a totally different take on what truth is even like, and it does it with this short, simple poem. And the poem starts with this really powerful contrast to that ad we just looked at. The ad was all noise and demands, but this starts with quiet confidence. It says, truth doesn't shout. And it continues on that same theme. The idea is that truth doesn't need to be bent or manipulated to convince you. It just is. It doesn't twist. And here's really the heart of the whole thing. This is the core message about how truth behaves. It sits still. That suggests this kind of stability, this patience. That is the exact opposite of that urgent buy now feeling from the ad.
And the poem wraps up with this beautiful, powerful image. It suggests that truth isn't found by the people making all the noise, but by the ones who are quiet and humble enough to actually listen for it, until the humble kneel to listen.
So the lesson boils this whole idea down into one key takeaway, a truth to remember, that comes from the book of James, and it really is the perfect summary of the poem's message. True wisdom isn't pushy, it's pure.
So you might be wondering, why is this lesson set up like this? Why go from breaking down logical fallacies straight into a poem about truth? Well, it turns out there's a really clear educational philosophy behind it all, a why that explains the what.
And here it is, the core belief that drives the whole curriculum this lesson is from: education without morality will hurt. The whole philosophy is that just having knowledge, just having critical thinking skills, isn't enough. In fact, on their own, those skills can actually be harmful if you don't have some kind of moral framework to guide them.
And here's how they break that down. The goal isn't just to be smart, it's to be wise, to make choices that don't cause harm. And in this view, a moral or spiritual foundation is essential for that to happen. And that is exactly why the lesson is built the way it is. It doesn't just teach you how to spot a fallacy, it connects that skill to deeper ideas about truth and humility. And that really leaves us with one last big question to think about, right? In any context, this lesson, a class you took in school, an article you read online, how does the why behind it, the fundamental purpose of the person teaching, shape what you learn and how you're taught to see the world? Thinking about that? Well, that's a huge piece of the critical thinking puzzle. Thanks so much for diving into this with me.